Every who down in Who Newville liked the holidays a ton, but where to get great prices on gifts, they had no idea. None. They searched and they searched for great gifts under $25. Gifts for spouses and friends and even their toddlers. When suddenly one who shouted, Walmart has what you want, knowing they have Lego, Tree Hut, and low prices to flaunt. So they enjoy the holiday season as who's often do. Cheering and shouting, Walmart has incredible gifts. Who knew? Find gifts they'll love under $25 at Walmart.
There is no hood like parenthood. Hi, I'm Kanika Chadda Gupta. I'm a former CNN journalist, mom of 3, including twins, and host of That's Total Mom Sense, the podcast. Now, if I had $1 every time I heard, gee, you have your hands full. On my show, I interview change makers on their life lessons, legacy, and superpower of intuition, which I call our Mom Sense and Dad Sense. I've had the privilege of working with Mom 2.0, March of Dimes, and the White House, and have had some pretty amazing parents on my show.
Hey, what's up? I'm Kelly Rowland.
Hi, this is Chelsea Clinton.
It's me, Bobby Brown. Can't wait to share my story.
That's Total Mom Sense is a production of the Evergreen Podcast Network. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube so you never miss an episode. To join my tribe, visit that'stotalmomsense.com and follow me on Instagram at Kanika Chadda Gupta. Now let's dive into today's episode. Why are you so stressed? You look tired. It's not like it's a life or death situation. What do you do when you hear phrases like these? Does your heart race? Is your mind exploding with thoughts that you want to spew out? Do you feel a churning in your gut? According to the American Psychological Association, the APA, around 77% of people regularly experience physical symptoms caused by stress. So if you got together with 10 of your friends, 7 of you would be feeling this way. But yet we feel so alone and isolated by our daily challenges, and we haven't come up with a mechanism to get off this treadmill. Newsflash, you had problems during your childhood too and felt the same exact manifestations of stress in your body. So if you haven't found an effective way to manage it over the years, turn up the volume. This episode was made for you. I'm joined by my dear friend, Dr. Aditi Nerurkar. She's a Harvard stress expert, nationally sought after speaker and TV correspondent, wife, and mother to her young daughter. During her medical school training, she discovered that even though stress plays a role in nearly 80% of doctors' visits, only 3% of doctors offer stress management counseling. Dr. Aditi aims to close this gap. In her debut book, The 5 Resets, Rewire Your Brain and Body for Less Stress and More Resilience, she takes a bold, solution-oriented stance, addressing the looming issue of stress that many doctors put on the back burner. She's been featured in the New York Times, NPR, the Times of London, and Oprah Magazine, and has appeared on The Today Show, Good Morning America, The Tamron Hall Show, The Mel Robbins Podcast, and more. Today, we're going to help you reset your life and mindset in the most tangible, manageable way possible. Dr. Aditi, welcome to That's Total Mom Sense.
It's such a pleasure to join you.
Oh my goodness. I have to shout out our friends. There's Eve Brodsky, author and founder of Fair Play Life. Lynette Brubaker, if you're listening. We collabed with No Women, Fran Hauser, Sarah Benkin, and Rujita Vedya, Bollywood choreographer. Our worlds collide in the best way, and we have so many common friends who are part of it. I just love it.
We should introduce all of them. They probably really love each other.
Yes. And congrats on your book. I have my signed copy here. I loved it, and I can't wait for my listeners to get a little precursor, from the author. So I'm really, really honored to have you joining me today.
Thank you. And thank you for organizing the beautiful event in New York City with No Women, Lynette, and it was just wonderful. Such a wonderful salon of conversation and connection. It was just such a joy to be a part of.
Let's dive in because you are a Harvard-trained stress expert, and stress is a zoo. And so I want to start with all the different animals that come to mind in our lifetime, in our daily kind of grind. And I'm going to draw upon them as we go through this journey together. So are you ready?
Ooh, I'm so ready. I haven't been to a zoo in ages.
Okay. So, baby chick, when you were a little chickadee, what was your childhood and upbringing like being an Indian American?
So I was born in Mumbai and lived there for the first 6 years of my life. I was raised by my grandparents, my maternal grandparents, because my parents, my mom and dad, also are physicians, OBGYN specifically, and they were doing their training here in the US. So I lived there, I think at 1 years old or 2 years old, they worked hard to bring me back to the US to be with them, a reunited moment. But then I went back to India simply because I was very attached to my grandparents and they to me. So I lived there until I was 6. And then for schooling, I moved here to the US and then I've lived here ever since. So I have very strong ties to Bombay and I speak my native language, Marathi, fluently, and I can, of course, understand Hindi. I have spent many of my summers in Bombay, in Mumbai. I still call it Bombay because it's just culturally what I was, taught as a child. And I have gone back every year for many, many years. Then when I went to college, I didn't go back as much, but I feel very connected to my Indian identity. It's something that's really important to me.
I love that. I love that. And we share this as well. I was born in Bombay and my parents immigrated when I was 2. And I also, speak Hindi fluently. And so we're doing a round 2 in Colaba. Let's do this again.
Love it.
Yeah, at the Thani Colaba. Now let's go on to the elephant in the room. And that's stress. And that's something that you called out when you were just a medical student. You knew exactly what that was and how it was affecting your life, and now how it affects your patients. So tell us about that first kind of run-in where you were like, this is stress and this is a problem.
It's interesting that you said it was the elephant in the room because I would add another animal to the mix, wild horses. When I was a medical resident working 80 hours a week, my first brush of debilitating acute stress was I was working in the cardiac ICU, taking care of everyone's hearts and not really paying attention to my own because, as we'll talk about in this conversation, I hope I was like, oh, I'm resilient, stress, come on, bring it on. I was taught at a very young stage of my medical training that pressure makes diamonds, and I was a diamond in the making. So when the times got difficult, as they often did when you're working 80 hours a week and seeing death and dying on a daily basis, I was working in a very coveted medical training program. We saw things that lay people certainly were not seeing and should not probably see, really horrible things because, simply because when you're in medical training, you're in the trauma bay, you're in the ER, you're seeing things in the cardiac ICU and the ICU that are really difficult. So I felt one day after a 30-hour shift, I was finishing my rounds on my patients and felt a stampede of wild horses across my chest. And it quite frankly knocked the wind out of me. I sat down quickly. The nurse gave me some orange juice. I was very familiar with her. We'd worked together for a long time. And she immediately sensed something was wrong. It lasted a couple of seconds. And then it just went away, magically disappeared. And I kept working. We both laughed it off like, oh, it was probably a rough night, on call. And then I kept rounding and finished up my rounding. And every night for 2 weeks, I continued to have that stampede of wild horses across my chest. It never happened during the day while I was working. And after several weeks of managing this real discomfort, I went to go see my doctor. So my doctor did the full medical workup, my heart tests and electrolyte tests, and said, everything's great. It's probably just stress. Just try to relax. So, big reassuring smile, good intentions. And I left and I went home and I thought, okay, let me try to relax. What does that mean? I went to movies with friends. I had dinners out, retail therapy, took a small vacation. But those palpitations, that stampede of wild horses continued and persisted. And so only when I put my own scientist hat on and really thought about what's going on and how is it affecting my brain and my body, only then was I able to find my way out of stress. I started using some of those science-backed techniques for myself. And then I found my way out of stress. And when I found my way out of stress as a stress patient is when I vowed to become the doctor I needed during that difficult time. And so fast forward 25 years, and here I am, a physician with a specialization in stress, burnout, mental health, and resilience, and now the author of The 5 Resets.
Yes. Oh, that's brilliant. And I feel like, as lay people who aren't in the medical field, anytime I watched Grey's Anatomy, which I watch religiously, I felt stressed, And so I can't imagine having to be under pressure and truly life or death situations on the daily.
Everyone is much more sensitized to this issue, so it's good. And there's a lot of conversation. It's been normalized very much so, which is important. But back then, words like self-care and burnout or even stress were not part of my vocabulary. They were not part of anyone's vocabulary. In fact, as I mentioned, I was taught pressure makes diamonds. That was the mantra that I told myself every single day. And so you can see how that would breed a certain mindset, what I call toxic resilience. And it's this idea of like push through no matter what and just keep going at all costs.
Yes. Yeah. And it's something that we have to really rewire. I want to talk about stress responses because they manifest differently in our body. When a patient is stressed, they'll come to you with ailments like back pain, headaches, weight gain, hair loss, but they all are kind of rooted in what you feel in the moment that happens over and over again. And it's like this wear and tear. Now I'm kind of segueing into the saber-toothed tiger. It's when we are forced to have a fight, flight, or freeze response when we're faced with a stressor.
I think one of the most startling findings on my journey to becoming a doctor specializing in stress was the study done in the 1980s, which found that 60 to 80% of all doctor's visits have a stress-related component. So as you're describing, patients go in to see their doctor with abdominal pain, headaches, nausea, vomiting, back pain, and of course, stress in medical terms is a diagnosis of exclusion, meaning we as doctors will do all of the tests, just like my doctor did for me when I came in with palpitations, to make sure it's not what we call an organic etiology, meaning it's not something actually happening in the body with your organs. Then when that is all ruled out, we say it maybe is stress. And so in my case, my diagnosis wasn't with my heart, but it was stress-related, stress-related palpitations in my case. So when that statistic came out, it was very provocative. 60 to 80% of all doctor's visits have a stress-related component, similar to when I went to see my doctor, meaning there was nothing actually wrong with any of my organs. It just felt like that. And that is what happens with stress. Stress, of course, if you have any of these symptoms, you have to first see your doctor. I have to say that as a physician, but also as someone who saw a physician to make sure that you don't have an organ that is giving you a sign of something gone awry. But stress has many flavors. And so you could have the physical manifestations of stress, like you mentioned, some common ones, fatigue and pain of some sort. So headaches, neck pain, shoulder pain, back pain, abdominal pain, joint pain. You can have some GI discomfort, neurological issues, so many ways that it can affect your body. It can also affect your mind and with mental health manifestations like anxiety, depression, insomnia, quick to anger, irritability, or feeling lethargic and disengaged. So stress has many forms and many flavors. The reason you feel this way is because of what's happening to your brain. So you bring up the saber-toothed tiger, which I love, that imagery of that tiger. Your brain, when it's going through stress, whether it's short-term stress or long-term stress, is governed by a small part of your brain. It's an almond-shaped structure. After this conversation, you'll never look at almonds the same way again. It's called the amygdala. And the amygdala is a tiny almond-shaped structure deep in your brain whose sole purpose is survival and self-preservation. And so really, it's focused on that. And it's meant to, evolutionarily, you would see a tiger in the forest and you would either fight the tiger or run away from the tiger. That's the fight or flight response. And that's what the amygdala is expertly designed to do. Short-term stress, and then you come back to baseline. The challenge now is that all of the tigers, none of them are short-term and acute that you meet in the forest. They're ongoing and long-term. So your bills or financial constraints, relationship problems, climate disasters in the world, or humanitarian crises, these are tigers that are just ongoing, but yet your amygdala continues to get activated. So it's on in the background at a low hum. So stress stops being an acute short-term thing that your body is actually expertly designed for and starts becoming a long-term chronic issue. And that is what over time can lead to these mental and physical manifestations, because the goal of life is not to live a life with zero stress. It's actually biologically impossible. There's a thing called healthy stress and unhealthy stress. The goal of life is to live a life with healthy, manageable stress that can serve you rather than harm you with all of these various symptoms.
Yes, exactly. And I know you speak about that in the book, adaptive versus maladaptive stress, like the stress of preparing for a job interview or going up on stage, or how kids feel before they're studying for an exam and they have that pencil in hand. Those are good stressors, and those are ones that we should be able to manage. But everything else, when we're really inside our head, are things we want to eliminate.
Very common examples of healthy stress are getting a new job, getting promoted, or if you are rooting for your favorite sports team, or planning a vacation. These are all healthy stressors, and they actually move your life forward. So it's about embracing those moments of healthy stress. However, when healthy, positive, scientifically, like you said, adaptive stress gets out of hand, that's when it can become maladaptive. It's dysfunctional, unproductive, and that's what leads to problems that we talked about.
Do you think that there are people who are predisposed to be more anxious, neurotic, anal retentive, and then those who are just generally calm?
We know based on data that early adverse events in childhood can prime your brain to respond to stress in a different way than if you didn't have adverse experiences in childhood. And that's because your brain is a muscle. What you do in your day-to-day can influence your brain and actually changes the shape and function of your brain. And so, yes, you might have an adverse childhood event that can influence your brain in a way that might not be ideal, but you also have the power as you move through adulthood and the rest of your life to reshape your brain so that it can serve you. So, of course, there are people who have different ways of responding to stress, the same way that we like certain foods or sports or colors or seasons even, because we are all individuals, and stress is a universal experience. It's the human condition. Of course it is. It's a universal experience that every single human being faces at some time in their life or the other. But the way we experience stress and how it manifests in your brain and your body are different based on you, your environment, what has happened to you, and how you respond to it.
Hi, this is Kanika Chadha-Gupta, television journalist, founder, and podcast host of That's Total Mom Sense.
Hi, everyone. I'm Claire Goss, the Senior Manager in the Education Department at Bright Horizons, and this is
Play Matters with Bright Horizons. On this weekly segment, we're double-clicking on the importance of play and how it's not just a pastime, it's crucial to learning for young children.
I'm here to clear up your misconceptions about play and learning. We're going to talk about the benefits of play, the different types of play, how to encourage play even when your child says, I'm bored.
So grab a notebook, the Notes app on your phone, or take some mental notes on today's takeaways and share them with your friends. Listen in, because play matters. In this installment, we'll be discussing tips for parents on encouraging play. According to Common Sense Media, kids 0 to 8 spend an average of 2 hours and 19 minutes on screens, their phones, tablets, and TV. Kids 8 through 12 spend about 4.5 hours or more. Now, when I was a kid, my parents would say, come home before dark, and my friends and I in the neighborhood and my sister, we'd play outside for hours. Foursquare, double dutch, catching fireflies, and going on a scavenger hunt at a lake nearby. Now, as parents of this new generation who are native to screens, we're competing with screen time because it's just readily accessible. How can we motivate kids to just get up and play outside?
The first thing I can say, if you know in your gut as a parent that your child's probably spending more time on screens than they should or than you would like, I would encourage you to kind of stand back maybe for a couple days or a week and really reflect on your child's daily schedule. Is there time for play? You can even go so far as to keep a notes app on your phone and just write down like, okay, this is what I've noticed my kid is doing every day during their quote unquote free time. I would encourage you to think about your environment at home, especially with young kids. Do you have open-ended materials? That's really what I recommend you having. Open-ended materials are toys or items in your home that can serve more than one purpose. They can be more than one thing, right? So materials like blocks, art supplies. There's not just one way to play with them. Is it a yes environment? So a yes environment is maybe it's a room or a space in your home where your child can really just play. They don't have to worry about breaking something. They don't have to worry about that's off limits. Don't touch that. Is it just a space or area where they can do any kind of a play, activity, or experience, and they know that nothing's off limits? Finally, I really am a huge fan of going outside, right? Outdoor play has all the benefits of play that we've been talking about and then some, because there's all these wonderful sensory opportunities. There's mental health benefits. It's just really, we just know this as parents, right? It's really great for our kids to be outside in the fresh air. So protect that and make sure there's ample time for outdoor play.
And I think as parents, we can model this. We need to get outside. We do a family walk, something that we're really enjoying over the summer. It's so lovely to see the kids pick up caterpillars and like point at things along the way, and it's fun. Or stop to climb a tree, and you can recreate that pretty easily, no matter where you are. Just family walks are really fun. Getting outside and playing with them, with their sports and at the park. What do you advise parents to tell kids when they say, "I'm bored"?
Feeling bored is that it's just a feeling. Okay. Your kids have all kinds of feelings about all sorts of things it's just a feeling, and it's going to come and it's going to go. Okay. So it's a normal feeling. It's a natural occurrence for all humans to feel bored sometimes. It's not your job as a parent to prevent your child from ever feeling bored. That doesn't make you a bad parent if your child feels bored. It's not damaging, right? Our number one responsibility as parents is to keep our kids healthy and safe. And boredom is not a dangerous or destructive feeling. It's just a feeling that's going to come and go. So boredom can actually help your child become who they are, right? That's how kids figure out what they do like and what they don't like, what their preferences are, right? So it means you're basically nudging your child to be kind of creative, use some critical thinking skills. What do you want to do next, right? If you've got younger kids, they're probably going to need some help coming up with a list of things they can do when they're bored. But if you've got school-aged kids and older, they're old enough to come up with their own ideas. So I'm going to challenge you to challenge them to be creative and think of some ideas for things they can do when they're bored.
I love that. I love that. And we definitely do this at our home, because we want our kids to have the autonomy and the agency to decide what they like to do with their time. And this is an example of my son's list. It says things to do on the weekend. and on it has Legos, snap circuits, watch a movie, play Catan Jr., play sports outside, eat. So there's different things on here that he can refer to. And we have a version of this for our road trips too, because it's so mind numbing when we hear, "Are we there yet?" And if you're on a long, long ride, it's like, oh man, we have to come up with things to do. So it's like, bring the books, bring the crayons. There can be some screen time in there, but let's have options. And I think when you give your kids independence to choose what they like to do, they feel really empowered by that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I encourage you to just introduce as many open-ended materials in your home as possible, because if you think about something like wooden blocks, or even like, I'm a fan of going to the recycling bin, get out some cardboard boxes, get out some cartons. A cardboard box is so many different things. It can be a spaceship, it can be a race car, it can be a house, it can be a sled. I mean, it can be anything. And those are the things that light up that creativity and all that good learning that we've been talking about for weeks.
I want to come back to my point about how adults need to engage in play too. And this is just for ourselves and our own mental health. When my youngest son was starting kindergarten, he was really just lamenting the fact that the room looked different. There's desks, and it wasn't like his daycare center was. And he said, I don't want to grow up. Grown-ups don't play. And my heart just sank when I heard that. So, what advice do you have for parents on how to get in on the fun and engage with play with their kids, no matter what their comfort level is?
Yeah, it's a good question because I do think that there are some adults who haven't prioritized play and now they have a young child and all that child wants to do is play with you, right? So you might not feel super comfortable. So I would advise you to just lean into those open-ended materials because they offer a lot of different opportunities. Another strategy we use at Bright Horizons a lot to make play more engaging and interesting is to use open-ended questions, right? So, what do you think would happen if? So, if your child's building blocks and you're like, "Oof, I don't remember how to do this. I'm feeling awkward." Get down on the floor with your child, watch them play, let them take the lead for a few moments, and then say, "What do you think would happen if we did this?" Or, "Why did you make that choice?" Right? Just engage with them a little bit and see what happens. Give your child the chance to make mistakes, to be a scientist, to experiment, but really lean into that messy play. I know it's hard for some adults to embrace the messy play, but it really is sometimes the most fun type of play. So if you can get in on the mess with your child, right? Go make a mud pie with them. Get your fingers in some finger paints, right? Knock that block tower over with them. It can be really fun. Another tip for making play more fun for you as an adult is really just to focus on the process and not the product of the play. So if your child and you and your child are collaborating on a block tower and your child wants to try something and you know it's going to fail, right? And you had this idea of how you wanted the block tower to look. You got to let go of that. It's all about the process, not the end product. Same thing with art experiences or anything else. You're building a stick fort in the backyard. And it's really easy for us to project manage that as adults because, again, we've had decades of practice and we already learned how to do this. To take a pause, take a deep breath, let go of perfection, let them be the leader of the play because if they're leading the play, they're also leading the learning.
And now on to our press play segment. What is your number one takeaway for parents and caregivers on how to encourage play?
I would advise parents to really just try to keep it simple. Okay. Don't overthink it too much. You don't have to be your child's cruise director. You don't have every single second of their day scheduled. Lean into those open-ended materials. Give your child the chance to be bored and give them the chance to play.
That's wonderful. Thank you for making this series so special and informative for us. You can always go back and listen to these bite-sized deep dives on that'stotalmomsense.com. We will see you soon. We hope you enjoyed this week's Play Matters with Bright Horizons segment. To find a center near you, get access to free parenting resources from experts, and tune in to one of my favorite shows, the Bright Horizons Parenting Podcast, Teach, Play, Love, visit brighthorizons.com. Well, I want to make sure that we're not feeling like hamsters on a wheel with this burnout, stress, rinse, repeat, and instead proceed forward with now the 5 resets. So we can be like cheetahs, full speed ahead with intention and volition. Tell us the 5 resets.
So the 5 resets are 5 small but mighty mindset shifts that can help you transform your relationship to stress and burnout. They were some of the strategies that I used when I was a stressed patient and found my way out of stress. And over the past several decades, I've been able to use them with hundreds, if not thousands, of my patients. And so I wrote that being a stressed patient myself and also now being a doctor specializing in stress. It has 5 frameworks along with 15 science-backed strategies to help you overcome your stress. So it's not so much about hacks because your brain is too smart for hacks, but it teaches you the biology of stress, why your brain and body do what they do, because often that's the first step, just awareness. And then most importantly, you want to close the gap between knowledge and what you may know and action to actually get there. Because often with my patients, I found, and even with myself, I knew what stress was and how, what was happening once I learned the data. But really, it's about how do you bring these into your life, into your busy, overscheduled, stressed life to actually make a difference, to change your brain and your body. And so that, I think, is the message of the 5 resets, is that you have the power to make meaningful change in your life when it comes to your mental health, burnout, and stress. And the other really important piece for me in writing the 5 resets was that everything is cost-free. And that's because as a doctor, I have seen patients of varying resources. And so, yes, while it is wonderful to, take an hour out of your week to go get a massage or do retail therapy or take 6 months, and when you're too stressed, fly to Bali for a surf holiday. I mean, I would love that. That's one of my dreams. The reality is that most of us, like 99.9% of us, can't do those things. We have constraints on our time, on our resources. And so there are effective scientific strategies that you can do within 2, 5, 10 minutes every day that can actually rewire your brain and your body. Because remember, I was a stressed patient. I was working 80 hours a week as a medical resident. I didn't stop work. I kept working. And yet I was able to overcome my stress struggle a little bit at a time using a lot of the principles in the 5 resets.
Yes. Okay, let's discuss them here. The first is get clear on what matters most.
When you're feeling a sense of stress, it's hard for you to get out of your own way. And that's because of your amygdala. It's not you, it's your biology. If you feel this way, you're not alone. It's not your fault, because the data shows that 70% of people, and in one study, 90% of people, are facing some form of stress and burnout right now. So when your amygdala is activated, like we talked about, you are thinking about your immediate survival and needs. It is so difficult for you to think ahead about the future and make a plan. And so this particular reset reframes the conversation in your head away from what's the matter with me to what matters most to me. And most is an acronym. It stands for M is motivating, O objective, S small, T timely. And so this first reset teaches you how to create a most goal, MOST. And it starts because the whole 5 resets is a roadmap to get you out of a sense of survival and just trying to make it through the day back to thriving. And so this first reset helps you craft your most goal, figuring out what matters most to you, and then using that as a metric and North Star for your journey forward.
The second is finding quiet in a noisy world and setting digital boundaries, which I think is so, so important because, if we were to pinpoint why we feel so much stress, a lot of it is technology being tethered to our phone and not knowing when to shut off.
So in this particular reset, find quiet in a noisy world, kind of the most important scientific foundation of it is that your brain needs rest and recovery. It's not a nice to have luxury. It is actually a biological necessity. And yet your brain doesn't really get a break, because what do we do during breaks? We mindlessly scroll, right? Like during the day or at night, and we're scrolling. And you learned about the amygdala. It's that small structure deep in your brain that's responsible for your stress response. And when you're scrolling, your amygdala doesn't recognize the difference of something that is happening in your backyard or something that's happening thousands of miles away, or clickbait. It's powered on the biology of stress. So you read headlines and then you have an immediate reaction. Your fight or flight response gets activated. So as we're scrolling, these are not benign entities. You think you're relaxing because we all do it, right? It's ubiquitous, like scrolling. You just hang out, you scroll. But in fact, it is doing something to your brain when you scroll and consume the headlines, social media, certain posts, certain visual images or videos, graphic things. And studies have shown that it actually increases, particularly if you're viewing, disturbing or graphic content, it increases your personal risk of PTSD. So these are not theoretical risks. They're actually, can really happen. And it has happened to people. And so really creating digital boundaries is simply about giving your brain the break it needs and deserves.
100%. I mean, one thing that I learned is that I should keep my phone far, far away. So I now charge my phone downstairs, sometimes in the kitchen or in the living room, and I have an alarm clock. It's something that I'm training my mind to get used to. I don't need to see the blue light in the middle of the night.
Love it. Keeping your phone off your nightstand can be a game changer. You put it in another room downstairs. Some people, can put it somewhere away. So it's just out of arm's reach. And the reason creating that geographical boundary, that buffer, is because most often people are scrolling, right? Like before bed. If you ask the majority of people, what are you doing 2 hours before bedtime? Everyone is on a screen of some sort. So you may say, I want to go to bed at 10, but you're going to bed at midnight, 1 or 2 in the morning. Why? Because you're on a screen. First thing in the morning, your eyes, before the second eye is even open, you're on a screen. Again, these are not benign entities. They have a direct influence on your brain chemistry, and the stress response. And so creating that buffer helps you, because then when you wake up in the morning, you're not reaching for your phone on your nightstand. You are looking at your bed partner if you have one, getting up, brushing your teeth, using the bathroom, and then you can check your phone, of course, but it just gives you a little buffer. So it just sets you up for the whole day. Equally at night, in addition to keeping my phone off my nightstand, what I also do is that I set up my phone on grayscale. And so I have my phone and then just hit a button and it goes to grayscale. What grayscale does is it switches your phone from color to black and white. And that has a potent influence on your brain and your scrolling habits, because it's like looking at a box of cereal. If you saw bright saturated colors, you want to eat it. But if it's just black and white, it kind of is boring. Likewise, grayscale makes scrolling less interesting. And there is a phenomenon that you and I, and many moms particularly, this is more common in women. It's called revenge bedtime procrastination. It's what happens at night when you are finished with a long day of work and taking care of the kids, and then you clean up the kitchen and you sit on your couch at, 8, 9 o'clock, big sigh, and you start scrolling. And you want to go to bed early because it makes you feel good. Again, this is not a knowledge issue. We all know that going to bed early makes us feel good. We have strict bedtimes for our children. And yet for ourselves, like, you can stay up till midnight or 1 scrolling and you're like, what did I just do? What was that for? It's called revenge bedtime procrastination. Again, it's not you, it's just your biology. It's because you haven't had a minute during the day. No time has been claimed as yours. And so what happens is it kind of like you bank it until the end. And then you scroll. And then, of course, because your amygdala starts getting activated when you're scrolling and reading these headlines, you feel a sense of danger. So you scroll some more and you scroll some more, because it's like your stress response is activated. So that is another reason why setting some digital boundaries is helpful. When you have grayscale, yes, you read a little bit and then you kind of get bored because your brain, it's not being stimulated. And then you're like, you know what? It's 10 o'clock. Might as well just go to sleep. And so you actually do get the rest that you need.
Now let's talk about syncing your brain and body.
So this reset is about the mind-body connection. The mind-body connection may be something new to many people, and it may sound woo-woo, but in fact, there's a lot of science to back it up. And it simply means that your brain and your body are in constant communication and inextricably linked. And we use terms of the mind-body connection every day. So butterflies at falling in love, your gut sense, you have a gut feeling about something. Or, you feel the mind-body connection, sweaty palms before you're presenting, heart racing before an exciting event, or abdominal discomfort, feeling queasy before something massive is happening in your life. So there's many, many moments when you might feel the mind-body connection at work.
So with the mind-body connection, I wanted to touch on meditation, and I'd come across a Harvard study on how meditation can actually eliminate the gray matter in the amygdala, which I found so fascinating. So can you speak to why we should have meditation as a practice?
That was a study done by several of my colleagues, and it's not that it reduces it, it thickens it. Meditation, particularly that study, was looking at mindfulness-based stress reduction for 8 weeks, and it found that it strengthens your prefrontal cortex. And that's a fascinating finding because it was one of the first studies that found that meditation, in fact, changes your brain. It pointed to a lot of the things that people feel, like a greater sense of emotional reactivity. They don't feel as reactive. Lifelong meditators or people who've been meditating for a long time don't have that emotional reactivity as much, or they might be less quick to anger, feel a sense of wellness and calm, etc. There might be some clinical correlation to this with your prefrontal cortex being a little thicker. Again, it's not always very, it's not like a cause, like meditation causes this. It's more like a correlation. And so, yes, that was a very provocative study. I wrote about it for the Huffington Post because it was a study the findings were just so wonderful. Since then, there's been lots of research to show that meditation changes the brain. Meditation can alter your DNA for the better. Meditation is a mind-body therapy. There's others, yoga, Tai Chi, and several others.
Is there a practice that you follow when it comes to meditation?
I practice meditation on a fairly regular basis when I'm going through periods of stress, like deep stress. With the book launch, for example, for like those first 3 months, I was meditating every single day for 20 to 40 minutes. And then I would also say another fantastic study that came out very recently, which showed that meditation, similarly, this mindfulness-based meditation, in fact, is the equivalent of anxiety medication for those with moderate anxiety, which was truly jaw-dropping results.
The next is come up for air. And I love this one because it just makes us focus on the breath. In our Indian tradition, pranayam is rooted in exactly this. So prana is our life force and yam means control, and it's controlling our breath. I love that you focus on that.
So your breath is the only biological function that is under your voluntary control and your involuntary control. So your heart doesn't do that, your digestion. And so there is something to the breath being the gateway. And the other thing that the breath does, it's like a toggle between your two nervous systems. You have your sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight response. And then the other nervous system called the parasympathetic nervous system. Again, big fancy scientific words. That is your rest and digest. And those two systems can't be on at the same time. They're mutually exclusive. And using your breath, and the fact that it can, your breath can be just hanging out, you're just breathing, or if you can modulate your breath, you can change and you can go from one system to the other. So when you're feeling stressed, your breath is shallow, quick, rapid. That's the sympathetic system. It's the fight or flight system. You can slow down your breathing, doing diaphragmatic breathing, 4-7-8 breathing, heart-centered breathing. I explain a lot of that in this particular reset to get you out of that sympathetic fight or flight mode and to that parasympathetic rest and digest mode by using your breath. So it's a really powerful tool and a real gateway. It also helps connect the mind and the body. So it's an important mind-body-breath connection. It's an important tool to help modulate your stress response.
And then the last one is bring your best self forward. What do you mean by that?
Bring your best self forward is sort of the culmination of all of the former resets. And it really focuses on getting you out now. You've done all of these resets, you've done the work, you've tried all of these techniques. And so now it's about using these techniques in your everyday life, understanding that your inner critic, which is that voice, that berating voice in your head, often holds a megaphone when you're feeling a sense of stress. And so this final reset, it's about taking that megaphone out of the hand of the inner critic and really moving towards your future self. And again, that inner critic is powered by the same part of your brain, your amygdala, that also drives the stress response. So there's a lot of connection there, and it's to decrease the volume on your inner critic.
And lastly, you are a lioness, you're a mom, you're a parent. And how do we teach our cubs to manage stress? Is there just one quick takeaway that you're like, when your kids trigger you, just do this?
So I am not a pediatrician, and I'm a doctor in adult medicine. But what I really try to do is just manage my own stress and try to be a good example. Also, because we know that when you are feeling happy and healthy, your heart has an electromagnetic field that extends 15 feet, is what they say. And so really focusing on making sure that I am managing my stress the best I can, of course, as a way to be a good example for the future generation.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Aditi, for sharing all your insights with us. And I'm so excited for my audience to get this book, and I'll link it in the show notes. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a joy to talk to you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode and how we drew parallels to the zoo that is our life and our journey on this earth. I'd love to end with you finding some peace in your mind, body, spirit. So I will be including articles, studies, and even guided meditations in the show notes, as well as a link to purchase Dr. Aditi's book, The 5 Resets. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Dr. Aditi. I'm so excited to share this with my audience and have them change their lives for the better starting today. Thank you. Thanks for listening to today's episode. I hope you got some great takeaways from our conversation. Join my community by logging on to that'stotalmomsense.com. If you haven't already, please subscribe to That's Total Mom Sense, the podcast, wherever you listen, and be sure to rate and review. On socials, my handle is @Kanika Chadda Gupta on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and X. You can also find me on LinkedIn. My episode videos are on YouTube and YouTube podcasts with highlights on YouTube Shorts. Write to me at that'stotalmomsense@gmail.com. My team and I read all your pitches and feedback and are so glad to be in touch. Remember, always trust your mom sense and dad sense. Stay strong, super parents. See you soon.